Tension is mounting around Iran. An Iranian nuclear scientist was recently blown up in his car. Iran is threatening to block the oil supply to the west. But what proof is there that Iran can produce nuclear arms? Is the country building a nuclear bomb? One thing is certain. If a war breaks out, Iran is ready.
We will teach them a lesson they'll never forget in the history. Okay, this is the library. I want to show you the real centrifuge. This is one of the centrifuges from Natanz, a brand new one. I brought it to here, to the General Conference of International Atomic Energy Agency. You'll never be able to see the centrifuge and touch the centrifuge like this in any country. Because even
This is Dr. Ali Soltanieh. He's the Iranian ambassador for the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's a UN agency supervising countries that work with nuclear energy.
And this is, by the way, the heavy water, the first heavy water made in Iran, 99.8% pure heavy water. Now, of course, we are producing tons.
The UN is putting pressure on Iran to stop its centrifuges and to stop making heavy water.
And this is
They are concerned that Iran might be working on a nuclear bomb.
I brought it to show the whole world that this is the centrifuge of Iran, and they have to cope themselves with the reality.
Iran denies working on a bomb and has resolutely continued its nuclear program. It's quite an achievement. The program has had many setbacks. 5 Iranian nuclear experts have been blown up in their cars in broad daylight in the last 2 years.
ساعت 7:30 صبح امروز بود. من خواب بودم. صدای انفجار در حدی که شیشه‌های خونه لرزید.
So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the attacks. But the Iranian ambassador claims to know who's been killing his scientists. He has to make an important call before sitting down to be interviewed. Meanwhile, we read the Christmas cards he sent this year, with a special message from the Supreme Leader himself. We wish you a world free of nuclear weapons.
Statues for you.
Pleasantries over. It's time to ask, who's killing the Iranian scientists?
Israel and Americans.
How do you know?
Because the people who have been captured have make a confession in Iranian media and televisions, and the people know. Therefore, Iranian intelligence, organizations have already captured them. They have made a confession that they were having training in the United States and, of course, Israel particularly, and they have been involved directly in the assassination of our nuclear scientists.
This is Ronen Bergen, an expert on the Israeli Secret Service. He's an Israeli investigative reporter and author of The Secret War with Iran. Bergman claims not to know if Israel was behind the attacks, but he does think the war with Iran has already begun.
All units, military intelligence, to some minor extent, the Shin Bet, the Internal Secret Service, and mostly Mossad are putting enormous effort. We're talking about thousands, actually thousands of people working daily on how to understand and maybe sabotage what is happening in the Iranian nuclear project.
Iran's brazen bid to develop nuclear weapons is certainly first and foremost a threat to my country, to Israel. But it's a threat to the entire region. It's a threat to the entire world. Israel thus expects the international community to act swiftly and to act decisively to thwart this danger. But we always reserve the right of self-defense.
Whether that includes killing Iranian scientists is not clear. But the message is.
Israel must always reserve the right to defend itself.
Does that mean Israel would actually attack Iran? Avner Cohen is a professor and an expert on Israel's military strategy. He says Netanyahu's rhetoric may result in a military confrontation.
Because once you create that kind of image, once you create that kind of perception, image and self-image, you cannot let that image destroy by showing yourself as a paper tiger. And once you make those kind of threats and those kind of clarification in a very bold language, Iran will not be allowed to be a nuclear weapon state. You come to the point that either you are being shown to be serious about what you have said, or you're being viewed as just empty words. And I believe that Israeli leaders at that kind of moment, especially the current Israeli leaders, Netanyahu and his Minister of Defense Barak, they would take action.
How would Iran respond when it came to a military attack by Israel?
My officials said we will slap on the face and a strong, of course, iron fist. We will teach them a lesson they never forget in the history.
How?
Well, of course, we are not going to explain how, but I'm sure that we will do something that whoever has done regret it, and the others will never forget in the history.
Now the moment of greatest anxiety, waiting those last few seconds.
Israel is convinced that Iran is building a nuclear bomb and finds it unacceptable. It's a perverse twist of fate, because had it been up to Israel, Iran would have had an atom bomb long ago. In the late 1970s, Iran was ruled by Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a dictator with Western support who celebrated his birthdays Korean style. Pahlavi crowned himself King of Kings, or Shah-in-Shah. The pro-Western Shah invested heavily in Israel.
Publicly, Iran was hesitant to declare official relations with Israel, but under the public radar, Iranian money was feeding tens of thousands of people in Israel. People, their relatives worked in the military industry, and Iran was buying in billions and billions of dollars from the Israeli military area and other industries for their army.
The Shah had nuclear ambitions too, and Israel made him an offer.
Reading the secret transcript in one of the meetings between then the Minister of Defense, Ezra Weizmann, later to be the President of Israel, and the Deputy Minister of Defense in Iran, General Tufanian, you read it, Ezra Weizmann is telling Tufanian, you have great army, you have fabulous king, you have wonderful secret service, but you lack one thing. Tufanian, puzzled, says, what, Mr. Minister, what do we lack? He said, you lack long-range ballistic missiles that can carry nuclear warhead. And we, Israel, are going to help you on this. And we arrange for you, Mr. Deputy Minister, we arrange for you a special demonstration. Please go with my people, and we are going to fire one of these rockets, of course not armed with nuclear warhead, to the sea, blow up a ship, and you'll see how efficient it is.
So Israel was helping Iran to go nuclear?
Israel was helping Iran to build the vehicle for a nuclear bomb. Knowingly.
But after 40 years of dictatorship, the Iranian people began to stir. Failed land reforms caused widespread poverty. Spiritual leaders opposed the Shah's pro-Western policies. An uprising was led by an exile living in Paris, Ruhollah Khomeini, a Shiite mullah. Israel began to fear that its rocket technology might fall into the wrong hands.
In the last minute, something like March 1978, just a few months before the regime collapsed, Israel realized that something is wrong and that the regime is or might be taken down. the whole equipment and the blueprints were packed and sent back to Israel.
On February 1st, 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini returned to his native land and established the Islamic Republic of Iran. The new Shiite leader turned out to have a strong and explicit opinion on nuclear weapons.
In fact, about 27 years ago, when I was in Vienna again at that time as an ambassador to the IAEA, he was talking to the people, and I was listening to the shortwave radio, listening to him directly. He said, and he warned the people of the world from the danger of the nuclear weapons of two superpowers. And it is interesting. He called on intellectuals, scholars, writers to enlighten the public about dangers so that they uprise against this nuclear weapon. And I can tell you, I did the same thing. I quoted him, translated that message in the Christmas card, and I sent to all missions and ambassadors that time, about 27 years ago, the same thing that I did it now for present Supreme Leader, so that the whole world know that we are against because of our religious obligation.
Allah forbids the atom bomb. But according to an IAEA report, in 1987, Iran was in touch with a clandestine nuclear supply network. The IAEA took it as a clear indication that Khomeini's Iran was indeed interested in the atom bomb.
Not everybody in Iran were happy with Khomeini's decision not to continue developing a nuclear bomb. One of them, for example, number 2 in the regime, Hashemi Rafsanjani, thought that Iran should pursue this path. I think maybe today he thinks differently, but at that time, in the mid-80s, he sent his delegates to meet secretly with Dr. Abdul Qadir Khan in Dubai, and they started the nuclear negotiation that would evolve to huge relations between Iran and Abdul Qadir Khan and his network.
Iran was said to have done business with nuclear scientist Abdul Qadir Khan whilst he was based in Holland. So did the Netherlands play a part in the Iranian plans for a bomb? Khan, a Pakistani, was at Delft University of Technology at the time. He looks back on those days with warm feelings.
My studying at Delft was the finest time, and I can say whatever I learned or whatever I know, I owe a great deal to Delft.
In 1972, Khan got a job with Urenco and Almelo in the Netherlands. This company produced enriched uranium using centrifuges. The technology was top secret because it could be used for making nuclear bombs. But Khan secretly copied confidential information and more. He was also keen on parts of the centrifuge that did not pass quality control. In 2004, one of Khan's former colleagues admitted knowledge of this.
Als die toleranties niet gehaald werden, dan werden die onderdelen dan in een grote prullenbak gegooid. In die lagen daar werd helemaal niets aan gedaan. Dus Abdul, die zag dat allemaal liggen. Die kon dat allemaal gewoon mee naar huis nemen. Dat heeft hij ook gedaan ook. Dat was geen enkel probleem. En niemand controleerde dat. Dat lag daar gewoon.
In October 1975, the Dutch authorities became aware of Khan's espionage. But Khan was not arrested. The Ministry of Economic Affairs had him moved to a different company. That was all. But Khan sensed danger and went back to his native country, Pakistan. There, he was appointed head of the country's atomic program with great success. In 1998, Pakistan tested its first nuclear bomb, with thanks to the Netherlands.
En ik hoop dat met Nederland alles heel goed gaat. Met hartelijke groeten. Dag.
But Pakistan was not the only country to benefit from Khan's expertise. The former Urenco employee grew into an international illegal wholesaler of nuclear secrets. Those willing to pay could buy nuclear arms from Khan. North Korea was a satisfied customer. It's not clear whether Khan helped out Iran as well.
How important has he been to the nuclear program of Iran?
No role.
No role.
Of course.
Khan was a major supplier of technology to Iran for the enrichment program. That's clear. There's no doubt about it. He provided them with hardware and with designs.
Robert Kelley has a great deal of experience with countries that want an atom bomb on the quiet. As a UN inspector, he visited Iraq, among other places, and as one of the IAEA's highest-ranking people until he retired in 2005.
Has Khan made a big difference to Iran's nuclear program?
Absolutely, yes, because he provided information that gave them many years head start if they had decided to do it on their own. So Khan was a great help.
So you're saying Dr. Khan has played little part in the development of Iran's nuclear program?
If you ask 10 times and mention Mr. Khan, my question is, we have nothing to do, Mr. Khan.
Iran wouldn't be where it is today without Khan?
No, certainly not, unless they found someone else to steal information for them, because he gave them information that was vetted information from Urenco and allowed them to not have to do trial and error to get to where they are.
So Iran's nuclear program is a bit made in Holland?
You really want me to answer that on camera? That's inappropriate, isn't it?
I'm only pushing the issue, Dr. Soltanieh, because Khan, as you know, stole the designs in Holland, and I work for a Dutch program, so that's why I'm interested to know whether Iran's nuclear program maybe also be a little bit made in Holland.
Never ever. Never ever.
There's always a dispute between historians whether history is moved by people or by phenomena, by social phenomena. I would say that he is a proof that sometimes history is moved by people. If he wouldn't exist, or if the Americans would agree to Mossad request to take him out long before he was discovered and taken off his duty, I would say
Mossad asked for him to be killed?
Mossad basically or suggested or proposed the idea to take him out, because it was clear, it was not clear how dangerous it is, but it was clear that this guy is the world's proliferator, that he is putting in danger world peace because of his actions to sell know-how and machinery.
What happened to the request?
The Americans declined that completely.
Khan was allowed to live, and Iran continued to enrich uranium for years, in secret, using centrifuges. In 2002, the IAEA discovered that Iran was building an underground factory near the city of Natanz.
This is Natanz, and this is where the centrifuges are. They're buried underneath here. They put something called a burster slab above them. It's a very strong, thick building, but then they put more earth, and then they put a concrete layer above that. So if somebody drops a bomb that's supposed to penetrate through the concrete and go off, the burster slab fools it into thinking it's inside the building and it blows up.
What is the significance of Natanz when it comes to Iran's alleged ambitions in trying to build a nuclear weapon?
Well, it's a huge factory was designed to contain something like 50,000 centrifuges, which would produce far more enriched uranium than you can imagine them having any need for. So it's just, it's of a scale that only makes sense if you have a weapons program.
The discovery caused an international commotion. The UN Security Council discussed it and demanded that Iran stop enriching uranium.
Of course we will not do that. They said we are not suspending the construction and completion of heavy water reactor. Of course we will not do that, because we are having 1 million patients struggling with cancer, and they need radioisotopes. We have to speed up to complete this reactor to produce radioisotopes. Why shall we stop this reactor?
Well, this is a reactor that they say they built for producing medical isotopes. My assessment is it's not a very good choice for medical isotopes. It's too big. It's located too far from hospitals. It was also being done in secret. The medical isotopes that you want to use to put into people have short half-lives. They decay quickly and they disappear. And so if you produce the medical isotopes hundreds of miles from where you're going to use them, then they might decay before you even get them to where you want. So you'd like to do this in something like the Tehran research reactor right in Tehran, where the biggest hospitals are likely to be.
The Iranian president Ahmadinejad has repeatedly refused to suspend the program. The boycotts and possible attacks on Iran are things he can live with.
Yes, some few Western countries, including United States, might, you're right, might use this as a pretext to put pressure on Iran. But shall I bow to the pressure, which is not right? Shall I lose the inalienable right? Shall I deprive my Iranian nation, Iranian generation, over 70 million Iranian from access to technology because of these sort of allegations? Of course we cannot do that. And in the history, my government and myself will never be forgiven to do such a mistake. But we are fully cooperating with the IAEA, and we are fully prepared to remove any ambiguity if there are, of course.
Iran continues today to produce enriched uranium and heavy water. Not for a bomb, they say, but for cheap energy and for cancer medication. Israel and the US do not believe any of it. So who's right? The answer was supposedly supplied by the IAEA in 2009.
Iran heeft gewerkt aan een kernwapen. Ook zijn er in het geheim proeven gedaan die erop wijzen dat Iran bezig is een kernwapen te ontwikkelen. Dat staat in een voortijdig uitgelekt gedetailleerd rapport van het IAEA, dat is het atoomagentschap van de Verenigde Naties.
But the IAEA's information was wrong, according to Robert Kelley.
I agree they might still be working toward the development of a bomb. That's clear. The report doesn't prove it. The few paragraphs that have information that is supposedly current are very weakly sourced. It's very difficult to read those and understand where the information came from, or if the information is accurate. And one of the paragraphs concerns information that is probably inaccurate. It's very easy to go back and see that that particular document is probably forgery.
This is the contested document. It's 2 pages long and written in Farsi, the language of Iran. The subject line reads, Neutron Initiator.
Neutron initiator is a little device that starts the chain reaction in a nuclear bomb. A nuclear bomb will not go off without this little pulse of neutrons that has to occur just at the right time.
What is it about? Okay, it's
Well,
about, it's written about neutron. Okay, about neutron activities.
Is it authentic? Because some...
No, of course. How can I say it? You just give me a copy of things, typed in Farsi.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the whole world could go to Microsoft Word and the Word's computer Word, and then just type out in Farsi. How can you prove that this is related to Iran? That is exactly good point you show me.
People suspect the current document is a forgery because of language, because of the way the Farsi language is used. It would appear that the report was not written by someone who's a native Farsi speaker. You would think that a genuine classified document from Iran would have been written by a native Farsi speaker. So there are choices of words, choices of phrases that just don't seem genuine to people who speak Farsi.
This is exactly, that's what I'm saying, that nobody can believe that these kind of things will be real. They are forged and fabricated. They just did it hastily, typing in Farsi, and just putting a signature, an emblem of the Ministry of Defense. Of course, anybody could do it in a matter of seconds, and they gave to the agency.
The document came into the possession of the IAEA in 2009. At the time, Mohammed El-Baradei from Egypt was in charge.
If you go to Mohammed El-Baradei's memoirs, you'll see that he was very skeptical of the document because he had no way of sourcing where it came from, because the markings, like the confidentiality, the dates, the headings are all missing. you really have to take it on faith that this document is genuine. It's just 2 typed pages with no other information about them. So I think they viewed it very skeptically and put it aside.
I took one of these stamps of confidential stamps in Farsi from my office, and I went and officially said in the Board of Governors, Mr. Al-Baradei, I sent it address to Director General, I am ready to lend you to give to the Ambassador of America, so that from now on they do not forget to stamp all these documents against Iran. This is a fact. CIA is doing a very lousy job. They just wanted hastily to give something against Iran. They forgot to stamp at least some classification.
Mohammed al-Baradei did not trust the document, but it was still part of the report after he left.
It tells me that they were, I would say, dishonest in not saying we threw this document out once before, but now we're going back and looking at it again. They
could have changed their minds. And,
well, of course.
And maybe now they are convinced that it is true and genuine.
I think it would have been much more honest to say, the world knows that we looked at this document before and judged it to be a forgery. We no longer think it's a forgery because. But I think the reasons that people think it's a forgery are still there. They're still correct. And the agency is not giving both sides of the issue.
The IAEA refused to respond. Instead, the UN agency simply referred us back to its report. Whatever the IAEA says, Israel relies on its own sources and is convinced of Iran's nuclear ambitions. Yet Israel is currently the only Middle Eastern country that has an atom bomb. So how can they say that Iran having nuclear arms is totally unacceptable? According to Avner Cohen, they consider it vital to maintain that monopoly.
It allows Israel on various occasions to say politically no to various kinds of requests or demands that come from the world community, in particular vis-a-vis the Palestinian. It allows Israel to keep a certain kind of strength, even vis-a-vis the United States on various issues. So I believe that indeed one of the invisible, underlying but important elements in this confrontation between Iran and Israel is something that does not get that much attention in public, and that's Israel's desire to go into a great deal of pain in order to, including the possibility of war, in order to protect and to shield that strategic asset called nuclear monopoly. Benign, but it's important.
But Israel says it fears more than just losing its nuclear monopoly.
Most people think that this is really unlikely, that out of the blue, Iranian bomb would be dropped on Tel Aviv, because everybody understands what would be the consequences of that. There would not be Iran as we know it as well. But, you know, a country that its leaders are full of messianic Islamic fervor, who knows how far they can go with their apocalyptic vision.
رژیم صهیونیستی در بنبست کامل است و به فضل الهی این آرزوی تو به زودی محقق خواهد شد و این جرثومه فساد از صفحه روزگار محو خواهد شد.
There's only one country in the world, only one, that publicly calls for the destruction of another country. And this is Iran calling for the destruction of Israel.
It's not the first time that Israel has felt threatened by a country that it believes to have an atom bomb. In 1981, Israeli fighter jets flew deep into Iraqi airspace. They bombed a nuclear reactor under construction, Osirak. Israel was sure that Saddam Hussein wanted to use it to produce a nuclear bomb.
I would say that if we want to draw a lesson from Israeli determination to prevent a country that calls for its destruction to reach a capability to do that, then Iraq is a very good example.
כל הערבים מסתכלים העיניים למעלה, לא מבינים מה קורה. שנ"מ.
Israel celebrated the attack on Osirak as a resounding success. But a defense think tank in Oslo has a very different opinion. The Iraqi nuclear reactor was totally unsuited for building a bomb, according to historian Malfried Braut-Heghammer.
It would have been very difficult and very foolhardy of Iraq to do so, and I haven't found any indications that the Iraqis intended to use the reactor for the purposes of a weapons program.
Why would it have been foolhardily?
Because the reactor was under IAEA safeguards, and so...
Which means?
Which means that it was inspected regularly, and any attempt to divert the reactor would have been detected, certainly on this scale, would have been detected.
Because diverting the reactor means?
Means taking material out of the reactor that was intended for the production of nuclear weapons, rather than nuclear research and nuclear fuel.
Ironically, in 1981, in order to prevent another attack on Iraq, Hussein decided to order the production of an atom bomb after all.
He gave his scientists carte blanche to set up a nuclear weapons program, and he told them that you can have whatever you need to be able to do this.
Braut-Heghammer argues that the Israeli attack backfired completely.
And by that I mean that it produced a nuclear weapons program that wasn't there before, and within a decade Iraq was on the threshold to a nuclear weapons capability, according to IAEA officials. And so that doesn't sound to me like a resounding success.
Iran's brazen bid to develop nuclear weapons.
It is the lessons from Iraq are shaping debates in Israel, but also elsewhere. And this case is held up as an example of a success story of attacking nuclear infrastructure, when in fact there are lessons from this case suggesting that such attacks can make things worse in the long term.
Israel is convinced there is the real threat of a Shiite bomb and is threatening military intervention. Iran is determined to carry on its program, regardless of international pressure. As the global debate rumbles on, what will it take to break the current stalemate?